a great article called "Do Umpires Dream of Electronic Strikes?" Now, Brockman, do you ever see Blade Runner?
No.
The movie Blade Runner is amazing.
I've heard that.
You need to check it out. It was based on a Philip K. Dick book called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" I believe this has to be a Blade Runner reference. And I don't, not every article headline is written by the actual author of the piece. So my apologies to Bleacher Report's Scott Miller to start with this question here on the Rich Eisen Show. Is that a Blade Runner reference at the top of your article, Scott? Mike, you there?
I don't know. I mean, I as I always tell my editors when I file a story, I'm like, look, the story, that's my strong suit. In terms of headlines, like sometimes I'll write a headline or put a picture in the story in the queue in which we file these things. But I always tell my editor, look, the headline and the art, that those are just placeholders. If you like it, use it. If you don't, do your own thing. And this was them doing their own thing.
Well,
but yeah, it could be.
It's a very old school headline from no doubt a millennial there at Bleacher Report who put that at the top of your article. So let's get right into it.
Huh?
Let's get right into it, Scott, because I must profess I've heard about the fact that that Major League Baseball is kicking the tires on having some form of a robotic device call a strike or a ball instead of a home plate umpire, but maybe this is naive. I honestly thought it meant like an actual robot behind home plate. This includes a human element as well. I give you the floor as to what this system that you've written about is all about, Scott.
Yeah, and first off, you're not alone, Rich. I think a lot of people, you hear robo-ump, and you expect a full-blown robot to be standing behind home plate, which, by the way, probably would be pretty entertaining in and of itself. But, no, it refers to the electronic strike zone, which is a system of lasers. It essentially uses the technology that baseball is using at the major league level for things like to measure exit velocity of hits and speed, launch angles, and StatCast stuff about how fast did the outfielder cover 20 yards. It's kind of the same idea, only used as at home plate. So what happens, it's a real live umpire, just like we're used to seeing standing behind home plate, and he's got an earpiece in. And what happens is this TrackMan system with lasers and such that is calibrated to measure the strike zone. A pitch arrives, and the umpire gets something in his earpiece, strike, ball, or no track. No track is what it sounds like. It's like, doggone it, the lasers missed that one. They shouldn't miss too many. So the umpire then says ball or strike. Now, the umpire has to still be very alert because things come up, such as, the old check swing at the plate. A batter starts to offer at a pitch and then holds up. Well, the electronic strike zone doesn't tell the umpire that's a strike or a ball. It tells him where the pitch was located, if that was a strike, but the umpire still got to say, okay, decide, was that check swing a strike or did he hold up in time and it's a ball? So, it can get a little tricky, and the last, they're hoping to use it in the Atlantic League the whole second half of the season. One of the most recent delays, for example, was the system all works on Wi-Fi, right? The umpire has an iPhone in his pocket and the earpiece in his ear. Well, one of the most recent delays, they found when the umpire strayed too far from home plate, if he had to jog down to first base to, change, make a call or just as the play went on, he was leaving the Wi-Fi area. So one of the most recent delays was they had to put extended Wi-Fi in each ballpark. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and baseball's watching it closely. Baseball's helping the Atlantic League. The Atlantic League's kind of the research and development area, so to speak, of MLB. And if they like what they see, then, I don't know if it's going to be next year, but in the near future, we could see this at the major league level.
Wow. Scott Miller, a national MLB columnist for Bleacher Report, with a fascinating article that's on Bleacher Report today about the electronic strike zone that's being tested right now. And, man, you spoke to Cy Young Award winners in Sabathia, Scherzer, also Kluber. You spoke to studs of the game at the plate like Yelich and Hosmer. Lucroy as a catcher. What's the sense? Do players like this possibility to come to the major league level, Scott?
It's pretty mixed, and it's pretty interesting in that what I found, for example, talking with Corey Kluber, a lot of players, pitchers and hitters, agree that because your first move, just like you, Rich, and what you do and me and what I do, it's human nature. Like your first reaction, almost everything is, okay, how's this going to affect me, right? I mean, we're all that way.
Right, sure. There is an eye on Miller and Rich and Eisen. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So, who would the electronic strike zone benefit the most? Most hitters and pitchers, everybody agrees it could benefit the pitchers because, as Corey Kluber said, there are certain pitches, especially mostly the curveball, that may clip the very front of the electronic strike zone, and so it could be called a strike. But then as it curves, it could even bounce on the plate or bounce just behind the plate. So with real umpires, regular umpires, that pitch is almost always called a ball. Well, in this setup, it could be called a strike. And as Corey Kluber said and other pitchers said, that pitch is going to be impossible to hit. So, that's one potential glitch of this system. Now, Corey Kluber, you would think, would be, God, yes, I want this electronic strike zone. I'm going to get so many more strikes. Kluber said, I really don't want it. He said it could benefit pitchers in situations like I just laid out. But he said, I just think it takes the human element away from the game, and I'm not sure that would be a good thing, and pitchers could really manipulate this thing. So even though a handful of pitchers think it could help them, some don't want it. Now, CC Sabathia, the Yankees pitcher that's retiring after this year, he's absolutely in favor of it, and some hitters are as well. Eric Hosmer, as you mentioned, I spoke with him, and his attitude is, look, if baseball can get this thing, to where it's as close to 100% accurate as possible, he said, I'd be all for it because, like everybody, even though it could benefit pitchers, hitters look at their own situation and they remember all the times they were called out on third strikes that they say that was 2 inches outside. So some hitters want it, some don't. Some pitchers want it, some don't. There's a whole lot of debate right now around the game. A very interesting debate, I might add.
Scott Miller, Bleacher Report. Do umpires dream of electronic strikes? His newest piece on Bleacher Report just right now, just out today, here on the Rich Eisen Show. So just to walk through it here, an umpire that has the AirPod in his ear has a device, an actual iPhone in his pocket. So you got the baseballs in one pocket, you got the iPhone in the other pocket. You're hearing into the AirPod some other human being up behind home plate in the press box say ball, strike, no track. And with no track, the umpire will have to rely on his actual old school for the last 100+ years, calling balls and strikes with his eyes. That's the way it works? That's the way this system works, Scott?
Yeah, pretty much, except the voice he hears in his ear is an electronic voice. It's not another human being at the other end of that. It's the lasers are calibrated and then feed into the electronic system, and then the electronic system spits out strike, ball, or no track.
So then it's possible. Is it possible, Scott, for the no track to basically throw your arms up? You can have that as the voice of Joe West. Can Joe West do that? So you can actually request what the voice is? Can you do that? How about Angel Hernandez? If it's a missed pitch, it's the voice of Angel Hernandez. What do you think, Scott? Can we do that?
Now, you know what, Rich? You went from Blade Runner early to now you're talking horror movies. The voice of Angel.
Well done. Yes, Scott Miller.
Angel Hernandez. That possibility. that might make 100% of the major leaguers say we don't want this if it's going to be the voice of Angel Hernandez.
Well, in that respect too, is you got a comment from the Umpires Association saying in part that the entire Major League Baseball umpire staff averaged over 97% correct ball and strike calls over the 2018 season. I could probably put together a video of Hernandez missing 4% of those, Scott. I mean, So how does this get reconciled? Umpires saying what they're saying, MLB wanting to be perfect, players and and pitchers saying something else. How does it all get reconciled best to your reporting and seeing everything out there?
Well, like a good old-fashioned backroom negotiations, I think, and it's interesting as well because one other angle to this, the Major League umpires, as you would expect, are very, very wary of this. I mean, and like anybody, as it should be, they take pride in their jobs, and they think they're the very best in the world, even if they miss some strike and ball calls here and there. And they are very good, almost all of them. So they take pride in their job, and like a lot of us, they're looking like, okay, good. So now computers might come and take our jobs as well. So they're wary. But as the scenarios we talked about, obviously you're always going to still need umpires, just even for the check swing example I gave you. But what's interesting as well, one other layer down beneath the surface to this is we hear so much about the owners and players when their basic agreement comes up, and the current deal goes through whatever year. Well, the deal between baseball and the umpires union is up after this year. This is a negotiating year right now.
Wow.
Between the commissioner's office in baseball and the umpires union. So this adds a layer to that, and I'm not sure if management is able to hold this over the umpires or not. I don't think the electronic strike zone has developed quite to the point. It's not ready to be implemented next year, so they can't tell the umpires, sign this deal or you're all going to be gone in place of robots. But that's another layer that adds some tension to the negotiations right now as well.
So then last one for you, if you will, ballpark it for me, Scott Miller, or Bleacher Report. If let's just say the umpires say, okay, when does Major League Baseball envision bringing this to the Major League level, Scott?
Yeah, they don't have a date in mind yet. They would like this to work and work well, and then I would say it would be in the near future. But how complicated this is. This was supposed to have started in the Atlantic League at the beginning of the year in April, and they had a handful of delays, even up to and including what I said. They figured out as they were trying to get this going that they needed to set up not just Wi-Fi, but extended Wi-Fi for when the home plate umpire roams out of his area. So they were not able to get this going until recently. They tested it out in a Long Island Ducks and Somerset game, and then they unveiled it. Kind of the big public bells and whistles unveiling was just last Wednesday at the Atlantic League All-Star game. They're hoping to run it all through the second half of the year. It's not, and the Atlantic League is an independent professional league.
Right.
So the minor leagues, it's not running yet in any of the minor league systems. So they're trying to work out all the kinks this year. So the next step, if they can get the kinks worked out, then would be to move it into some minor leagues and then make sure they get it up and going there. And they would have to run those tests in the minor leagues before it would come to the majors. So if everything goes well, I mean, it could be in the major leagues, I'm going to say maybe within 3 years or so.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's not that far out. But if the tests don't go well, it could be delayed a little bit beyond that. But it's definitely something that MLB is investing much time and money into. And you know how that goes. Once you start investing money in, they're not doing it just for fun.
That's right. Scott, great piece. Thanks for calling. Hopefully this first of many times you call into the show. Thanks again.
My pleasure, Rich. Thank you.
You got it. Scott Miller of Bleacher Report. Do umpires dream of electronic strikes?
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.